Hello, I'm Mr. David Strange, and today I'm back to show you some vintage magic. This time I have a series of black and white vintage magic photos that I'm going to show you of vintage magic apparatus. Now these photos were once property of the L.L. Ireland Magic Company, which was opened by Laurie Ireland in 1926 in Chicago. Now, after Laurie's death in 1954, it was continued to be operated by widow Frances Ireland and J. Marshall, whom she later married. The catalog was very popular and, of course, a favorite among magic enthusiasts. Now, in an attempt to date these photographs, which had to do some guesswork on, I'm not entirely certain, but I believe these photos are at least 60 years old because the shop moved from this location here, 431 North Clark Street, Chicago, Illinois, to 5082 North Lincoln Avenue in 1963, and it was renamed Magic Inc. at that time. And it's currently still in operation today in 2023. Now let's go ahead. I know you're waiting to go ahead and take a look at these, so let's go ahead and flip over this first one. Now this first, I just know it as the Ontario trick because that's literally what it says on the photograph. And here we have several numbers on 3 different tiers. I don't know exactly how this works. This is probably some mathematical trick. Maybe it spells out Ontario trick, or maybe that's just the name of it. And this is just a display to show these various numbers, and it's probably some mathematical prediction that a magician can do. It looks like that this breaks down. There's a couple hinges down here, so it looks like it hinges out of the way. Well, it's kind of interesting because it doesn't look like it would actually pack up that way, because the hinges, if you fold these sides in, these hinges right here, it looks like they would bang together. So I'm not exactly sure the purpose of the hinges. But there's probably something that I'm missing, and all these centerpieces probably come off. And let's go take a look and see at the next one. Now, I do want to take a look at the back of this photo real quick. All these photos have the L.L. Ireland stamp on them, and there are several annotations on most of them. This one only has one additional annotation. You can see here it says 13 by 9 over 9. And at first I thought it was the measurement of these photos, but it's not. It's probably the final measurement of the photos in their final form, not necessarily these. This, excuse me, is of a silk of a moth or butterfly. Now I'm guessing that probably this silk would start blank at the beginning of a trick, and then the magician would turn it into this colorful silk. Or the magician would take several different colors of silks, put them in a tube, or make them vanish, and they would all reappear as this one beautiful, colorful moth or butterfly silk. And the silk probably for stage, so it's probably a decent size, probably a couple feet by a couple feet, or 3 by 3, something of that nature. These front annotations, this is like 2 feet and 2 foot and a quarter inches. So I'm not sure if it's going to be the photo or the item itself, but considering a lot of these photos all have the same lower measurement, this 2 1/4, I just really not sure exactly what that's going to be in reference to. 2 inches just seems too small, but 2 feet seems like about the right size. But I'm not really sure what this lower number represents. This 41S, I have no idea. Let's move on to the next photo here. Here, this photo coming up, I have actually 2 different types of photos. I won't say 2 types, but 2 of the same, which is the dove pan. This one right here seems to be one that was made extra. It has no annotations on it. And then this one, I believe I would like to call it the original photo because it has all the additional annotations to it. L.L. Ireland stamp, 13 by 9 by 9, or over 9, 49.5. So again, I'm not quite sure what all these annotations mean. And all these photos, except for this reprinted dove one, and I say reprinted, from the same era, they all have tack marks. So either someone before me previously had these just stuck up on their wall, or at the Ireland Company they had these stuck up on a wall for reference. Or maybe whoever took the photos had them hung up for reference for whatever project they're working on with these particular items. Now with these dove pans, I think these are really neat because you can really see the mother of pearl inlay, and I bet this was really gorgeous when it was made, when it was brand new. I would love to see something like this for real. And I like this addition of these little metal feet. I bet this was really something to see, and of course probably kind of a nice spectacle for the eyes on stage. Very, very, very cool. And yeah, this photo is just a little bit darker than this one. Next up is one of my favorites. More annotations on the back, but this is a photo of the rising card. And here a deck of cards is placed within a wooden holder, at least it appears to be wooden, judging by the striations on it, and screwed onto a metal base. And here, a spectator selected card would rise magically out of the deck. Very mysterious. And this is one of my favorites. I just like how this photo is of this particular piece of Magic Apparatus. It's really cool. And actually, it's probably much larger than you think it would be. This is probably a larger deck used for the stage, but I can imagine it being a smaller sized one for a regular deck of cards. Either way, really nice, and what a great photograph. Now, as much as I like that last photo, this photo is really neat. You've got a couple of stands with some bowls at the bottom with a couple decks of cards. Looks like the stands are adjustable, or at the very least you can tear them down for travel, which I imagine you'd be able to. Got a couple rings which would hold the balloon, and inside each set of rings, once you pop the balloon, it would reveal what was being held inside by these clips. Here we have the Queen of Spades with the corner taken off, and I bet you if you pop this balloon over here, it would show that the corner of the Queen of Spades would magically appear within this balloon on this stand. Again, very mysterious. And what a really nice photo as well. This one's definitely seen some better days. You can definitely tell this photo's got some extra wear on it, but still looks very nice. And again, has all those little tack marks on them where someone hung it up. And they definitely want to make sure none of these photos fell off, because there is 8 holes in just about every single one of these photos, except for the one extra dove pan. And finally, we have the last piece here, which I think is very unique, and I'll explain why in just a moment. We got some more annotations on the back here. But here we have a fan of cards with some arrow indicators. And I can only presume that this is part of an instructional, or showing perhaps positions of certain cards during the magic trick, or perhaps trying to identify certain marked cards or upjogged cards. I really don't know, and I've looked at this photo for a bit, and I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to see here. Again, I don't have enough context to really draw some conclusions, but someone more knowledgeable than me might be able to go, oh, I know exactly what this means. And when it comes to magic, there are all sorts of variations. Just because you think you know how one trick is done doesn't mean you know how they're all done. And sometimes there are subtle variations that each performer puts on their own magic tricks that are usually uniquely different from someone else's. Now, what I do like about this, and I'm going to flip this photo over here real quick, just so I have some contrast, is that in amongst all these photos I got, I have a negative of this photo, and this negative is giant. It's very cool. And of course you can see the fan of cards, you can see each of the numbers, and just what a neat thing to have. Very, very cool. And I just think all these photos are really neat to have. If you ever come across some old Magic Apparatus photos, and I tell you, I don't ever see anything quite like this usually out there. If you get a chance, you should snag them some photos, because these are really, really neat to have. If you like magic, magic history, vintage magic, having a couple of them would just be really neat to have in your den or study, or a place where you do all your magical practice. And more than likely, I'll have some of these hanging up in the chateau for other people to enjoy once I get it open. Well, I'm Mr. David Strange, and thank you so much for watching today's video on some great vintage magic photos. Very mysterious.
Teleport, another dimension. Teleport, another dimension.